Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the podcast that I, your host, David Woodruff, lovingly title The Woodruff Report. We've got a Super Bowl showdown coming up in a week. The Eagles and the Pats will lock horns and battle in Minnesota for the Super Bowl. And that is sure to be a tremendous, fun game. Two franchises sort of at the opposite ends of the spectrum. You've got the Patriots, the contenders who always seem to be contending and winning Super Bowls, against the Eagles, who have not won a Super Bowl since the AFL-NFL merger in the Super Bowl era. So two teams on opposite ends of the spectrum, sure to be a good, excellent game, and we'll have all the preview of that coming up later on the show. But first, we need to talk about how the two teams got there. The Patriots are in another Super Bowl via a close, exciting win over a good Jaguars team that put up a good fight, while the Eagles had a rather simple game while they dismantled the Vikings. We will review all those games and preview what is sure to be an incredible Super Bowl on this edition of the Woodruff Report. Are you ready? Buckle up, because it's going to get fun. Episode beginning in 3, 2, 1. Let's start in the AFC and in the game that definitely was more exciting and the earlier of the two. The Jags and that incredible front and incredible defense going up against Brady and the magnificent, unstoppable machine that is the Patriots. And the first half, if you did not think this was going to be a good game, well, you certainly came to your senses after this first half. The Jaguars' defense was as good as advertised, and the Jaguars' offense was far better than people had given it credit for. Blake Bortles was able to move the ball down the field on, again, not a tremendous Patriots defense, but a Patriots defense that has been clutch and good down the stretch. And again, we knew what the Jags were going to do. They were going to pound the ball with Leonard Fournette, and they were going to go play action, look for those deep ones, and if those deep routes to Marquise Lee and the other receivers weren't open, they were going to check down to the running back, check down to the fullback or tight end, and just get easy yards, and they're going to be methodical in their drives down the field. The Patriots really took away Leonard Fournette in this game, and credit to the Jaguars, they kept plugging away, but at some point, I think you had to realize as the Jags offensive coordinator, okay, this Leonard Fournette pounding up the middle isn't working. But again, this was part of the game plan. This is the Jaguars style. They'll pound it in first and second down, try to get a third and manageable, something that Blake Bortles can pick up. They're not trying to give Blake Bortles too much to do. And they were successful in doing that in the first half. Even though Leonard Fournette wasn't having his best game, there weren't a lot of holes. The Patriots front, the D-line played very well. At least at the run side of the ball. Pass-wise, Blake Bortles had a lot of time. The linebackers did a good job filling the gaps, and Leonard Fournette was not really able to have any big gains. I mean, he was basically limited to 1 to 2 yard carries, maybe a breakaway run in this game for Leonard Fournette was like 6 yards. So if a breakaway run for the opposing team is 6 yards, you know you're doing something right as the defense. But the play-action game was working very well. The protection up front was very good. That Jaguars O-line, which many people do not give credit and which was sort of not seen as a weakness, but definitely not seen as a strength going in, was better than advertised. Blake Bortles had time in the pocket. And credit to Blake Bortles. If his first read wasn't open, he was checking it down immediately and letting his skill position guys do the heavy lifting. He just got the ball to his playmakers and said, okay, playmakers, go do your thing. I'm not going to hold the ball and try to fit this ball into a tight window. I'm going to give it to my guys who can maybe make a guy miss, get 6 or 7, and set up a third and manageable or pick up a first down, get us to 3rd and 4 and something that we can handle. And in the first half, this game plan was very successful for the Jaguars, who, after a scoreless first quarter, were able to put up 14 in the second quarter to take the lead going into halftime. Meanwhile, on the Patriots, offensively for the Patriots, they were stymied. I mean, they were still picking up yards, but they weren't looking completely unstoppable in the first half. Tom Brady wasn't really able to hit his outside targets, Brandon Cooks and Chris Hogan, save for a few long comeback routes to Brandon Cooks. He was quiet. The corners for the Jaguars were as good as advertised. AJ Bouye played well except for a late pass interference. More on that later, end parentheses. Jalen Ramsey was locked down. The safeties did their job. And then there was the pivotal injury to Gronk. So I'll go over that play a little bit if you haven't seen it. Gronk runs a seam route down the middle. The ball is thrown, he is semi-juggling it, and a Jaguars secondary player comes in and hits him in the head. I mean, this is CTE Central. This is just a nightmare for all neurologists and people who study the brain. This is a nightmare for all moms of children who play football. Gronk just gets slammed in the head, and he's clearly woozy getting up. He's sort of going to the sideline mouthing, "Oh, wow," or he might have been saying it, but he was, "Oh, wow, that was a big hit. Wow." He got clocked. There was a penalty for targeting, which, again, remember, in the NFL is not an ejection, which is different from the NCAA college football rules, which would have been an ejection for that kind of hit, no question. But in the NFL, it's just a 15-yard penalty. So the targeting penalty does happen, but at the same time, as a Jaguars player, you never want to see injuries, but you will trade a 15-yard penalty for the best weapon on the Patriots not being able to play for the rest of the game, and that is what eventually happened to Gronk. He had to go out. He never came back with a concussion. I'm assuming, again, I'm not in the New England locker room, but I assume that he will be playing in the Super Bowl, but he did take a huge hit. So we'll have to see how that goes. I'm sure there will be extensive coverage of that, seeing as Gronk is so important to that New England passing attack. So Gronk goes out, and now Tom Brady doesn't have his best weapon. And again, this isn't a lethal Patriots offense. You've got Hogan, really Cooks is the most outstanding receiver. You've got Amendola in the slot. But again, what elevates these mediocre players to a great offense? The man, Tom Brady. And as the second half approached, you sensed that the Jaguars weren't exactly, with the score being 14-10 in favor of the Jaguars at halftime, you sensed that the Jaguars weren't exactly playing to sort of keep scoring. They were playing to just hold on to the lead. And that's often what you find when you're playing the Patriots, especially in Foxborough. You're not actively trying to put on points and pile on and keep your foot on the gas pedal. Once you get up a certain amount and it's in the second half, you're sort of like, okay, now we just need to hold on. Let's chew the clock down. Let's run the ball. Let's keep the ball out of Brady's hands, but we're not taking deep shots and doing all that kind of stuff. We're trying to hold on to the ball and not let the greatness of Tom Brady onto the field. And that's sort of what I sensed watching the game with the Jaguars. They took their foot off the gas pedal offensively and started playing not to lose. To borrow an expression from my football coach, they started playing not to lose instead of to win. And I think that ultimately was a major aspect of the eventual downfall. So the Jaguars do score to make it 21-10, and now you're on high upset alert. Okay, can this young Jaguars team come into Foxborough and shock the football universe? Pardon me, the Jaguars were up 20-10, not 21-10. So they're up 10 points heading into the fourth quarter, but the fourth quarter is Brady time. Again, you sort of check your watch, you see that it flips from third to fourth. Some players start putting up the four fingers, and you're like, okay, now this human is about to turn into a savage beast that he is. And Brady, again, showed why he is one of the best clutch performers in the history of all sports. 14 unanswered points for the Patriots, who win it 24-10, capped off by a James White run on third down, which essentially killed the game off and made sure that they could just take a kneel and end the game. Blake Bortles apparently, once that first down was once James White picked up that first down, picked a football up and hucked it as far as he could into the stands. I found that sort of hilarious because you have this image of this mediocre quarterback who just believes in himself so much. He's on the sideline saying, I'm going to take my guys down and win against quite possibly the greatest dynasty of this generation, and they pick up the first down, and he's so frustrated, hucks the ball into the stands when all signs indicated that the Jaguars were really going to lose this game. Little funny aside, I thought, Blake Bortles throwing the ball into the stands. By the way, I'm an enormous fan of Blake Bortles. He gets a lot of unnecessary hate, and he played a lot better this year than a lot of people give him credit for. He, of course, will get the game manager, and he's just good because of the players around him label. But, I mean, at some point you have to give him credit for just doing what the team asks him to do and doing it well. And that's essentially what he did all season. He didn't try to do too much. The Jaguars front office did a tremendous job assembling a good team around him. But at the same time, he has to get some credit for not sort of trying to do too much, and I think he should. So great season for the Jaguars, who are definitely going to be back again. This team's young. They'll get Allen Robinson, their best skill position player, back next year. They'll get to build through the draft. I think they should definitely work on that offensive line. They might nab another defensive player in free agency to make that vaunted defense even better, and they'll definitely be back there, and they're going to cause more problems going down the road. One final thing that I'd like to talk about is there was a pass interference call on A.J. Bouye of the Jacksonville Jaguars, which really helped turn the momentum in favor of the Patriots, and it was an absolutely ridiculous call. Ridiculous. So here's the situation. Brandon Cooks, the ex-Saints speedster, say that one 5 times fast, is running a deep route down the left side of the field, and A.J. Bouye is covering him in man coverage, no safety help. So I feel like I can talk about this with a little more knowledge than most people can because I actually play wide receiver. And Brandon Cooks got dominated on this play. This is a receiver's nightmare. When a play like this happens and you're getting covered the way Brandon Cooks was getting covered, you just want the play to end and you don't want the quarterback to throw you the ball. You're just like, I really don't want to get exposed on film by my coaches for getting dominated on this route. A.J. Bouye has the position on Brandon Cooks. He felt the route, knew it was coming, and was able to take it away. And basically, similar to boxing out in basketball, he's able to bracket Cooks so that Cooks has nowhere to go but to keep eating up the space between where he lined up and the sideline. In my experience playing football, they call that the jungle. And what you always want to do as a wide receiver is keep the jungle open. The jungle is basically the area in which the quarterback can throw the ball. And the bigger the jungle is, the easier a throw for the quarterback the throw for the quarterback is. So, if you've got 15 yards of space between you and the sideline, the quarterback has 15 yards of space to put that ball where his receiver has a chance to adjust for it and the defensive back basically has no chance of getting it. So A.J. Bouye had cut the jungle down to about 1 yard. Brandon Cooks was basically out of bounds running his deep route because of the coverage by Bouye. And again, he was not pushing him or grabbing onto him or holding him. He was simply boxing him out and boxing him to the sideline. And it was a ridiculous call. And Tony Romo said it was suspicious live in the game, but it was downright terrible because it was essentially a pity call. This was you got dominated, I feel bad for you. The crowd is yelling, boo, so I'm just going to throw this flag. And looking back on it, it did change a lot of the game. So, of course, people are going to ask what would have happened if that call hadn't have been made. And again, I don't really have clear answers for you. I'm not going to say, the Jaguars would have won 50-0 or something like that. By the way, that would have been impossible. But I'm not going to make a bold claim like that. But at the same time, it did give the Patriots great field position to go on and score a touchdown and start to take the momentum away from Jacksonville, who had really seized it at the start of the game. So, again, just another sort of detail of this game and another reason why it was such a good game. The Patriots did not dominate the Jaguars. They did not crush them like some people thought they would. This was a tremendous game. And it especially contrasted with the game that we saw later. But anyway, Patriots win 24-20. They're going to the Super Bowl again. Belichick and Brady, a chance to win another Lombardi trophy. Let's head to the NFC, where the game definitely was not as tight, as the Eagles hosted an NFC Championship against the visiting Vikings. The crowd was going crazy at Lincoln Financial. People were just going nuts. Of course, Philly, the Eagles have not been the most successful team since the AFL-NFL merger, so any chance the fans get to go crazy, they certainly do that and more. We'll get to the celebrations after. But an interesting game because the Vikings get the ball on the first possession and they just drive down the field and score. A miscommunication by the Philly defense leads to a corner route by Kyle Rudolph. Perfect throw by Case Keenum right over the shoulder. 7-0 Vikings. And we're going, is this going to be a shootout, or are the Vikings just going to crush the Eagles? And in fact, neither of those two options occurred. So definitely a weird change of events as we're going in. The Eagles, basically after that small mess up, never looked back and just said, okay, next play. And certainly did they ever take advantage of basically the rest of the entire game. Nick Foles was basically God. He basically completed every pass he threw. I think he was like 26 for 32. Don't quote me on that, but it was some ridiculous stat line like that. He couldn't miss. Nelson Aguilar and the whole crew were getting open. The tight ends were huge weapons. The Vikings, even with that great secondary of Xavier Rhodes and Anderson Dejo and Harrison Smith, they didn't have enough answers for this incredible Eagles pass-catching crew. Nelson Aguilar, of course, the tight ends, Jay Ajayi coming out of the backfield, and this was just an offensive show. Everything clicked for the Eagles, who ran away as winners with a final score of 38-7. Now, one thing about this game, you'd be tempted after seeing the score to think that the Vikings offense basically consisted of 3 and out, give the ball back to the Eagles, touchdown Eagles, 3 and out, etc., etc. But the Vikings were actually able to move the ball to some extent. They were simply derailed by, on those good drives they'd have once in a while, clutch turnovers. Case Keenum threw a pick 6 early to tie the game at 7, and once you got that rowdy crowd into it, you definitely didn't see any way for the Vikings to come back. I mean, this stadium was loud. This stadium was Eagles heavy. They were going nuts all the time, and it's hard to play in that kind of environment when every little 6-yard gain for the Eagles results in a crowd eruption that destroys and ruptures your eardrums as a defense. So, I mean, not really much to talk about in this game besides the greatness of Nick Foles and the balance of the Eagles' offense. Jay Ajayi, LeGarrette Blount punishing defenders on his way to the end zone. The pass catchers doing their thing. This Eagles' offense looks legit, and it's going to have to be, because as good as the defense is, we saw it in the Jaguars game, the Jaguars' defense is good, but if you don't get enough production from your offense, it doesn't matter. You could have the Purple People Eaters or the Steel Curtain. Brady's still going to put up 3 to 4 touchdowns on you because of his greatness, and you're going to have an offense that can do the job. And that's why Eagles fans should be so excited going into the Super Bowl, because Nick Foles looked like a guy who can lead them to the promised land. So 38-7, the Vikings are annihilated, I should say, by the Eagles. And it's an Eagles-Patriots Super Bowl, sure to be a good one, in Minnesota. Ironic, actually. There are all these stories going around about how Vikings fans are signing up to be Ubers to drive Eagles fans to the wrong place during the Super Bowl because they're so angry at the Eagles fans because the Eagles fans were jerks after the game. So it's going to be interesting how that all shakes out, because two fan bases that are hated by a lot of people, the Eagles and the Patriots. So a little bit about the after game, the post-game celebrations in the city of Philadelphia after the win. Basically, Philadelphia descended into anarchy and the purge became real. People were driving dune buggies up the rocky steps, riding on the roofs of cars, honking their horns. Things were burning. Things were being thrown. There was a lot of yelling and screaming. And basically, if the world ended, it looked a little bit like what Philadelphia looked like. If a nuke hit today, tomorrow would look like Philadelphia. And so apparently the only thing the Philadelphia Police Department did in anticipation of an Eagles win was grease the poles, like the stoplights and stuff, so people couldn't climb up. Of course, people climbed up chanting like, "We don't care about these greased poles." Obviously, that's a lot more complicated than the stuff they were probably saying, but it probably conveyed a similar message is what I'm trying to say. They were roasting the police department, and the police department was just nowhere to be found. I mean, sort of respect. Just let the people do what they want. There's not much you can do to control it. After the Giants won the World Series around my neighborhood in San Francisco, people went nuts and were burning stuff. And no matter how many police you have, people are always going to find some place where they can burn something and revert to their primal nature. So, a little bit about the post-game celebrations. Look up the videos. They're pretty funny. There's probably some profanity, but besides that, they're entertaining. So, I want to do a quick Super Bowl preview before I let you guys go. Patriots, Eagles. Obviously, the Patriots are the favorites going into this game, and we're going to look into the Woodruff Report crystal ball. I might come out with another episode with a more in-depth preview, but I can't make any guarantees. So, the Patriots' offense against the Eagles' defense. The Eagles' defense is very good. They're anchored in the front by Fletcher Cox, the big, incredible, one of the best players in the NFL, defensive tackle, and they've got a speed pass rusher in Brandon Graham, the D-end out of Michigan, coming off the edge who can harass the quarterback. And they're a good defense, a very good defense, and especially they're an emotional defense. When they get in the game, you're not going to get many yards. You're not going to get many yards on them. And if Eagles fans travel to Minnesota, like I know they will, this defense can feed off the energy. Again, all that doesn't take into account the greatness of Brady, though. And I do think that this Eagles defense is not as well equipped to defend Brady as the Jaguars defense was. So if I'm going to give an advantage here, I'd give it to the Patriots offense. I think that the pass catchers are going to be able to find separation on corners like Ronald Darby, and Brady's going to be able to throw it. And even if your receivers don't get separation, when you've got Tom Brady, he'll throw it to you and you'll catch it because he can fit it in that tight window. So I do give the edge to the Patriots offense. As far as the defense goes, Nick Foles was Jesus in the last game. So if he can keep up the performance, this Patriots defense is not the same as the Vikings, who were the best defense in all of football. And the Eagles hung 38 on them. So it'll be very interesting to see if this devolves into a shootout. If a Nick Foles-Tom Brady game will become a shootout in the Super Bowl. Again, if we look at history, rarely do Super Bowls become shootouts. The long layover leads to a little bit of sloppy play, plus all the nerves going into such a big game. But this Eagles offense will be able to move the ball on the Patriots. Can they avoid the costly turnovers in the red zone? Will they throw any pick sixes? Will they go for it on 4th and 1 and get stuffed near midfield and give Brady a short field? It's those kind of mistakes that are going to derail the Eagles' chances of winning. And as the team that's not as good, they have to play a very mistake-free game to have a chance of competing and then beating the Patriots. So, without further ado, let's look into the Woodruff Report crystal ball. What will the final score of the Patriots-Eagles Super Bowl be? The crystal ball has spoken, and the final score will be 31-17 Patriots. Congratulations, Tom Brady. You're going to win again. Eagles fans, I'm sorry, but you're just going to have to wait a little longer. Maybe with Carson Wentz it would be different. The Eagles defense will start out hot, but in the end, Brady will take control and seize the momentum like he always does, and will start hanging points on the Eagles, especially in the third and fourth quarter. The Eagles' offense will sputter early, pick it up in the second and third quarter, but those Bill Belichick halftime adjustments will prove too much, and they will not be able to get it done when it is needed most. Costly fumbles, costly interceptions will be at a premium. Which defense can get more of them? Obviously, the Woodruff Report crystal ball believes it is the Patriots. So, Woodruff Report preview, Patriots 20-31. Sorry about that. Eagles 17. So thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Woodruff Report. On this episode, we talked about the NFC and the AFC Championships and gave you a Super Bowl preview. Again, I might come out with another Super Bowl preview that is more in-depth. Just stay tuned. I will upload if I can. Again, thanks for listening. This has been your host, David Woodruff. Have a good night, have a good weekend, and thanks again for listening.